It was a chilly evening in the city, the kind of night when the wind cut through every layer of clothing and the streets felt emptier than usual. Most people hurried home, clutching their bags or phones, trying to escape the cold. On a small residential street, a young girl ran ahead of her mother, chasing her dog that had slipped out of the backyard. She was laughing, carefree, unaware of the danger that was approaching. At the same time, a sleek black luxury car was speeding around the corner. The driver, a man who had everything money could buy, was lost in thought, thinking about a meeting he had just finished. He was used to the city's chaos, but tonight he wasn't paying attention. He didn't notice the small figure darting across the street until it was almost too late. The tires screeched as he slammed on the brakes, but the car was moving too fast. The young girl froze in the middle of the street, her dog barking and running in circles around her. In that moment, no one expected anyone else to act. And yet, out of nowhere, a woman appeared. She came running from the corner, her clothes tattered, her shoes worn down to the soles. She saw the girl in the car and didn't hesitate. She lunged forward with all the strength she had, pushing the girl out of the way just as the car hit her. The sound was terrifying, a loud thud that made everyone nearby stop in their tracks. People screamed, rushing to the street as the girl stumbled to the sidewalk, crying and shaking. The dog barked frantically, circling its owner, as if it understood that something terrible had happened. The driver jumped out of the car, his face pale and his hands trembling. He had seen the woman fly through the air, had heard the impact, and now she was lying motionless on the asphalt. He ran to her side, calling her name, but she didn't respond. The fear in his chest was stronger than anything he had felt in years. He looked at the little girl who was clutching her chest and crying and realized what had just happened. This woman, a stranger who had nothing, had risked her life to save his daughter. Guilt and gratitude mixed together, making him feel both ashamed and indebted. Other bystanders gathered around, some calling for an ambulance, others just staring in shock. The woman's breathing was shallow, and blood had begun to stain the street beneath her. Despite the chaos, there was a calm in the little girl's eyes as she looked at the woman who had saved her. She wanted to run back to help, but she couldn't move. The ambulance arrived quickly, sirens wailing and lights flashing. Paramedics rushed out, pushing through the crowd to reach the injured woman. They worked efficiently, checking her vitals, securing her on a stretcher, and carefully lifting her into the ambulance. The driver stayed close, still holding the little girl's hand, his mind spinning. He knew that without this woman, his daughter might have been seriously hurt or worse. He had never met her before, and yet she had done something that no amount of money could ever repay. As the ambulance doors closed, taking her away to the hospital, the driver felt an emptiness he hadn't expected. He stared at the street, now quiet again except for the occasional distant honk or barking dog. He kept thinking about her face, the determination in her eyes, the moment she had acted without thinking of herself. He had seen bravery before, read about it in books and heard stories on the news, but nothing compared to this. This was real, raw courage. The little girl was still shaking, her tears flowing freely. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering words of comfort, but she could see the fear in her child's eyes. She turned to the driver, her voice trembling, thanking him for being there. He could only nod, unable to speak. The image of the woman lying in the street had carved itself into his memory. Later that night, the driver couldn't sleep. He kept picturing the moment over and over, asking himself why someone who had so little would risk everything. He thought about his own life, the comfort he enjoyed, the security of his wealth, and compared it to hers. He didn't know anything about her yet, but he felt a deep respect, a recognition that she had a heart bigger than most people he knew. He decided he would find out more about her, not out of obligation, but because he felt a connection, a sense of responsibility. He wanted to know who she was, why she was on the streets, and how someone like her could show such incredible bravery. He felt a stirring in himself that he hadn't felt in years, a sense that his life needed more meaning than meetings and money. As the hours passed, he remembered small details, the way her hand had been steady as she pushed the girl, the determination in her eyes, and even the worn shoes that spoke of a life on the streets. Every detail made him feel a mixture of admiration and urgency. He needed to know her story, to make sure she was okay and perhaps in some way repay her for saving his daughter. The city was still, except for the occasional siren or distant noise of traffic. But for the driver, everything had changed in an instant. One act of courage had shifted his perspective, made him question what truly mattered. Money, status, possessions, all of it seemed trivial compared to the life of a human being. He had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would stay with him forever. By morning, he had already made arrangements to visit the hospital. He wanted to be there when she woke up, to see the woman who had changed the course of his daughter's life. He felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation, wondering how she would react to someone showing her kindness. He didn't know if she would be grateful, suspicious, or indifferent, but he was determined to find out. Meanwhile, the woman was unconscious in a hospital bed, monitors beeping around her, the sterile smell of the room contrasting with the warmth she had felt in those few moments of bravery. She had no idea who had come to her aid or how much her actions had impacted a wealthy man and his daughter. All she knew was that she had acted on instinct and, in doing so, had perhaps changed the lives of others forever. Her story was only beginning, and neither she nor the driver could imagine the journey ahead. That one night, one act of selflessness had set into motion a chain of events that would alter everything for both of them. It was a moment that would be remembered not for the tragedy, but for the courage, the humanity, and the bond that had started to form in the most unexpected way. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft beeping of machines and the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes. The homeless woman lay on the bed, her face pale but peaceful, a blanket tucked around her. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, unaware of the small miracle that had taken place just hours before. She had been unconscious since the accident, her body slowly healing, while the man who had witnessed her bravery waited anxiously in the visiting area. When he first arrived, he was nervous. He had never been this close to someone from a life so different from his own. He looked at her lying there, the strength in her actions still vivid in his mind, and felt a deep respect. She had risked everything to save a child she didn't even know. That kind of courage was rare, and he wanted to understand the person behind it. He didn't know if she would remember him, if she would even want to see him, but he felt it was important to be there. Hours passed slowly. Finally, she stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around, confused and scared, taking in the bright lights and the sterile surroundings. Her gaze fell on the man sitting by the window. He smiled gently, not wanting to frighten her. She blinked a few times, trying to focus, and asked in a quiet voice who he was. He introduced himself carefully, not overwhelming her. He explained that she had saved a young girl's life and that he was there because of what she had done. At first, she didn't understand fully. Her life on the streets had taught her that most people ignored her, avoided her, or looked down on her. Kindness had become rare, almost suspicious, but he didn't push, didn't demand gratitude. He simply sat there quietly, letting her know she had made a difference. Slowly, she began to relax. She told him her name and shared bits of her story. She had once had a home, a job, and dreams. Life had been cruel in unexpected ways, losing family, facing illness, and ultimately being left with nothing. She had survived on the streets, learning to endure hunger, cold, and the judgment of strangers. Yet, despite everything, she had never lost the instinct to help someone in need. Her voice was soft but steady, filled with honesty. The man listened intently, realizing how much strength it took for her to speak. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, a need to do more than just thank her. He wanted to help her recover, not just physically but emotionally as well. He began to understand that her courage in the street that night was part of who she was, and it came from a lifetime of challenges and resilience. Meanwhile, the little girl she had saved visited the hospital daily, bringing small flowers or handmade cards. The woman's eyes lit up each time the child arrived. There was a bond forming, fragile but unmistakable. The girl's innocence and genuine affection reminded the woman of the life she had once known, before hardship had pushed her to the edges of society. Each visit brought warmth, and with it a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt in years. The hospital staff began to notice the change in her as well. She had arrived scared, withdrawn, and distrustful, but the visits from the child and the presence of the man had begun to ease her tension. Nurses and doctors who had treated many patients on the streets were impressed by her resilience. They saw her not as someone broken, but as someone with a story worth hearing. They respected her bravery and even learned from it, quietly reflecting on their own lives. The man returned every day, not only to check on her recovery but to continue building trust. He didn't talk about money or charity, He simply asked about her needs, her comfort, and her well-being. He wanted her to feel valued, not pitied. Over time, she began to share more about her past, revealing the moments that had shaped her, both the joyful and the painful. She spoke of dreams she had lost, people she had loved, and mistakes she had made. Each story revealed a piece of her soul, a life that had been overlooked but never completely destroyed. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the window, she spoke about her love for teaching. She had once been a teacher in a small school, helping children learn not just academics but life lessons. She described the pride she felt in seeing her students grow, the joy of nurturing minds, and the heartbreak when she could no longer provide that guidance. The man listened silently, realizing that the woman who had saved a child's life on the street had also dedicated her life to helping others, long before hardship had taken everything from her. The little girl's visits became a highlight of her recovery. They spent time together, drawing, reading, and talking. The child's laughter echoed through the hospital room, breaking the walls of fear and loneliness that had surrounded the woman for so long. The simple interactions reminded her of the goodness in people and the possibilities of life beyond survival. She began to dream again, even in small ways, of what her future could hold. The man started to see changes in himself as well. Witnessing her courage and resilience, he reflected on his own life. He realized that wealth and success were meaningless without purpose and compassion. The woman had risked her life for someone she didn't know, showing him that true courage and human kindness could not be measured by money or status. He felt humbled and inspired, determined to help her not as an obligation but as a commitment to the humanity they now shared. Days passed, and her condition improved steadily. The doctors were impressed by her strength and resilience, attributing her recovery not just to medical care but to her mental determination. They saw her smile more often, her laughter returning as she spent time with the girl and the man. She had begun to feel safe, cared for, and valued, experiences she had rarely known in recent years. As the week progressed, the man decided to take action beyond the hospital. He wanted to ensure that once she left, she would not return to the streets. He quietly arranged temporary accommodations and made plans to support her while she regained her strength. He wanted her independence respected, but also knew she needed stability to heal fully. One evening, the woman looked out the hospital window, reflecting on her life. She felt a mixture of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, and cautious hope. She had faced countless challenges, yet here she was, surrounded by people who cared for her, a child whose life she had saved, and a man who had shown her trust and kindness. For the first time in a long while, she felt that life could offer second chances. The little girl, sensing the change in the woman, leaned against her shoulder and whispered how much she admired her. The woman held her hand, feeling a connection that went beyond the hospital walls. She realized that bravery and compassion could create bonds stronger than any hardships, and that her actions, however small or dangerous, had meaning and impact. By the time the woman was ready to leave the hospital, she was not only physically stronger but emotionally renewed. The man had provided support, stability, and a listening ear, while the child had reminded her of joy, innocence, and the importance of human connection. She was ready to face the world again, with hope guiding her steps and courage embedded in her heart. The experience had changed all of them. The woman, once homeless and overlooked, had found a sense of belonging and purpose. The man had discovered humility, empathy, and the true value of life beyond wealth. The little girl had learned that heroes could be ordinary people, driven by kindness and bravery. Together they had begun a journey that neither could have anticipated, a story of recovery, trust, and human connection that would shape their futures in ways they had never imagined. And though the streets outside continued as they always had, filled with people rushing home, honking cars, and the usual noise of city life inside that small hospital room, something extraordinary had taken root. A bond formed not by circumstances of wealth or status, but by courage, compassion, and the simple act of saving a life. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter in which the woman who had once lived on the edge of society could find hope, healing, and the chance to rebuild a life she thought she had lost forever. After leaving the hospital, the woman felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. The world outside had not changed, yet everything felt different. The man who had stayed by her side during recovery had arranged a small, modest apartment for her, just enough to offer safety and warmth. She had never had a place of her own in years, and walking into this small space felt like stepping into a new life. Everything was unfamiliar, but the absence of danger and the presence of care allowed her to breathe without constant tension. The little girl, whose life she had saved, visited often. She would skip into the apartment carrying small gifts or drawings, her laughter filling the rooms that had been silent for so long. At first, the woman hesitated, unsure of how to respond to such openness. But the child's innocence was impossible to resist. Slowly, she began to allow herself to enjoy these moments, even laughing along with the girl's playful stories and jokes. The man continued to visit, offering practical support without making her feel like a charity case. He brought groceries, helped set up the apartment, and provided small comforts. He also listened, truly listened, when she shared her past. She spoke of life on the streets, the people she had met, and the moments of both despair and resilience. Each story added layers to her character, showing the depth of her strength and the warmth of her heart. One evening, as they all sat together, the little girl asked if she could teach her something new. The woman smiled, remembering her years as a teacher, and agreed. She began teaching the child simple lessons at home, not just about reading and writing, but about kindness, empathy, and courage. The lessons became a daily ritual, bonding them even closer. The child looked up to her as a mentor and hero, and the woman felt a sense of purpose that had been missing from her life for so long. The man watched these interactions quietly, often smiling from a distance. He had never imagined that someone from such different circumstances could become so important in his life. He realized that wealth and comfort were not what defined human value. Courage, compassion, and integrity were far more meaningful. The woman, with nothing but her bravery and kindness, had changed his perspective completely. Over time, the woman began to take small steps toward rebuilding her life. She applied for temporary work, cleaning houses and helping neighbors with chores. Each day she earned a little, gaining not just money but confidence. She started to feel a sense of independence she had not known in years. The man encouraged her, offering guidance when asked, but he never imposed help. It was important to him that she felt empowered rather than dependent. Neighborhood kids began noticing the woman as well. They would stop by, curious about her or asking questions about the lessons she gave the little girl. At first, she was hesitant to engage, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. But as time passed, she realized that her experiences and knowledge could help more than just the child she had saved. She began sharing stories of courage, teaching lessons about empathy, and quietly inspiring those around her. The man started to think about ways to make a bigger impact. He remembered the woman's old notebook filled with teaching ideas and lessons. It sparked an idea. Why not create a program or foundation to help others who had fallen on hard times just like she had? The woman was hesitant at first, unsure if her past experiences mattered to the outside world. But as he explained, she began to see the potential of her story, not just as survival but as inspiration. Together, they started planning ways to reach others who needed guidance, support, or a fresh start. Meanwhile, the little girl continued to flourish under the woman's guidance. Her curiosity grew, her confidence blossomed, and she developed a deeper understanding of kindness and bravery. She would talk about her hero with her friends and classmates, not in boastful terms but in admiration of the woman who had risked her life for her. The child's admiration motivated the woman even more, reinforcing her belief that her past hardships had not defined her entirely. Community members slowly took notice. They saw a woman who had once lived on the streets helping a young child, inspiring those around her, and showing resilience that went beyond personal survival. People began approaching her, asking for advice or help. She never turned anyone away, even when resources were limited. Her reputation as a kind and brave figure began to grow organically, rooted in genuine care and experience rather than self-promotion. The man and the woman often discussed ways to expand their efforts. He offered financial support while she contributed ideas, insights, and hands-on guidance. They started small, with neighborhood programs for children and adults in need. Each small success fueled their motivation to do more. They discovered that collaboration between different backgrounds could create powerful results. His resources and her experience combined in a way neither could have achieved alone. One evening, As they all sat together in the small apartment, the woman reflected on how far she had come. From living on the streets feeling invisible and hopeless, she had moved to a place where she was valued, loved, and making a tangible difference. Her journey was far from over, but the steps she had taken were meaningful. She realized that courage was not just about the moment in the street, but also about every choice she made afterward to keep moving forward. The little girl, sensing the woman's reflection, hugged her tightly and whispered words of admiration. The woman felt a wave of emotion, realizing that her life, once filled with despair, was now influencing and shaping others in a positive way. The man, observing quietly, felt gratitude and awe. He had witnessed bravery firsthand, and now he saw the ripple effects spreading through their lives in the community. As weeks turned into months, the woman's presence became a steady part of the neighborhood. People who had once ignored or judged her began to see her differently. Her actions had a subtle but powerful impact, inspiring others to act with kindness and courage. She had become a bridge between worlds, those with wealth and security and those who struggled to survive. The man continued to support her discreetly, never seeking attention or recognition. He saw her growth as an extension of the bravery he had witnessed in the accident. Each milestone she achieved, from helping a child learn to guiding others in the community, reinforced the idea that human potential was limitless when nurtured with care, trust, and opportunity. The woman also began thinking about the future differently. She set goals for herself, small but meaningful steps to continue building a life she had once lost. She wanted stability, independence, and the ability to give back to the community. Each decision was informed by her past, her experiences, and the newfound understanding that courage and kindness were as important as survival. Through all this, the bond between the woman, the man, and the little girl deepened. They shared moments of laughter, reflection, and planning for the future. The child continued to see her hero not just as a savior in one dramatic moment, but as a consistent source of guidance, support, and inspiration. The woman realized that her life, though marked by hardship, could now be a source of hope for others. This period became a turning point, the bridge between a life of struggle and a life of purpose. The woman who had jumped into the street to save a child had herself been rescued, not just physically but emotionally and socially. She had found connection, respect, and the ability to impact lives in ways she had never imagined. Her bravery had ignited a series of events that transformed not only her life, but the lives of those around her, creating a story of courage, hope, and human resilience that continued to unfold every day. The days after moving into the small apartment were filled with small victories and quiet moments of reflection. The woman was learning how to live independently again, a skill she had not practiced in years. Simple things like cooking a meal, organizing her space, or taking care of her health became exercises in confidence and self-respect. Every completed task, no matter how small, reminded her that she was capable of more than survival. She was learning to thrive. The little girl continued her visits, and their routine became something both looked forward to. Each day they would read stories, practice simple lessons, or draw together. The child's laughter echoed through the apartment, bringing warmth to rooms that had long been cold and quiet. In return, the woman shared lessons not just about school subjects but about life. She taught about courage, honesty, and the importance of helping others. Each lesson was a reflection of her own experiences, giving the girl both knowledge and perspective. The man, observing quietly, realized that the woman's influence extended beyond his daughter. He saw neighbors watching the woman with curiosity and respect. Children who had once been cautious around strangers began to approach her, drawn by her gentle nature and willingness to engage. Adults began to notice too, appreciating her contributions to the little community around them. She had become a figure of resilience, someone who could inspire others simply by living with integrity and kindness. One day, while helping the woman clean up after a small lesson session with the girl, the man noticed an old notebook tucked under a pile of papers. Curious, he asked her about it. She hesitated, then explained that it was her teaching journal filled with ideas, lesson plans, and reflections from her years as a teacher. The pages were worn, but the content revealed a sharp mind, a compassionate heart, and an unwavering dedication to helping others learn and grow. He realized then that her impact could extend far beyond this apartment, far beyond the neighborhood. Inspired, The man suggested they consider creating a program or small initiative to help other children and adults in need. At first, the woman was hesitant. She had faced failure, loss, and rejection in the past, and the thought of stepping into something larger felt daunting. But with encouragement, she began to see how her experiences could provide guidance and inspiration for others. Slowly, they started planning, discussing ideas, logistics, and goals. The man offered resources and support, while she contributed the vision and knowledge of teaching, mentorship, and human connection. Meanwhile, the little girl began to blossom even more. She was learning not just academics, but empathy, problem-solving, and resilience. Her curiosity grew, and she started asking questions that reflected a deeper understanding of the world. She noticed how the woman had faced hardship, yet remained kind, brave, and willing to help others. That example became a cornerstone in the child's own growth, shaping the way she viewed courage and compassion. Community members began noticing the changes too. People who had once overlooked or judged the woman started to recognize her contributions. She was no longer just a stranger or someone with a tragic past. She was a role model. Her consistent kindness, willingness to help, and dedication to the child she had saved earned her respect. Some neighbors even began seeking advice, small help, or encouragement from her. She had become a quiet leader in her community, demonstrating that one person's actions could ripple outward and touch many lives. The woman herself noticed the change within. She felt pride, not just in surviving, but in the ability to give, teach, and guide others. Each day brought new lessons, not just for the little girl, but for her as well. She learned patience, strategic thinking, and leadership. She realized that life had given her an opportunity to turn hardship into strength, and strength into service. Each small act of teaching or mentoring reinforced her belief in the value of human connection and compassion. The man watched these developments with a sense of awe. He had expected gratitude from the woman for his support, but instead he found himself inspired by her resilience and vision. He saw that her impact went far beyond his own family. It was shaping the community around them. He felt humbled, realizing that wealth and power were limited in their reach. But courage, kindness, and guidance could influence lives in ways money never could. Together, they began to formalize their efforts. They organized small classes for children in the neighborhood, offering tutoring, guidance, and life lessons. The woman taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also resilience, empathy, and courage. Parents and neighbors began to take notice, appreciating the effort to nurture not just academic skills, but character and confidence. The impact was subtle but powerful, gradually changing the neighborhood's perception of what was possible when kindness and commitment were combined. As the program expanded, the woman began to reconnect with her own past. She thought of her former students, the lessons she had once taught, and the joy she had felt in helping children grow. Those memories inspired her to continue, to rebuild the parts of herself that had been lost to hardship. She realized that her life, though scarred by loss, still held value and purpose. Each child she taught, each life she touched became a reminder that her courage had lasting meaning. The little girl, watching these developments, felt proud and inspired. She saw firsthand how bravery, compassion, and resilience could change not only one life but the lives of many. She began sharing her experiences with friends, explaining how the woman had saved her life and then gone on to make a positive impact on the community. The stories spread quietly, inspiring other children and adults to act with kindness and courage in their own ways. The man continued to support behind the scenes, ensuring the woman had resources, stability, and encouragement. He respected her autonomy, allowing her to lead the initiatives while providing what she needed to succeed. Over time, he realized that their collaboration had grown into something extraordinary, something neither could have achieved alone. It was a partnership of mutual respect, shared purpose, and the recognition that each person, regardless of past or status, could make a difference. Months passed, and the woman's confidence grew steadily. She became more proactive, suggesting new ideas, reaching out to more families, and finding creative ways to engage children and adults alike. Her experiences, once seen as burdens, became tools for teaching, mentoring, and inspiring others. The apartment that had once been a small refuge now became a hub of learning, creativity, and connection. She also began mentoring adults who had faced difficulties similar to her own, helping them find work, regain confidence, or learn new skills. Her insight and empathy proved invaluable, As she understood firsthand the struggles of rebuilding life after hardship, people began to see her not just as a helper for children, but as a source of guidance and inspiration for anyone seeking to improve their circumstances. Her life had come full circle, from being someone in need to being someone who could offer hope and direction. The little girl's admiration for her grew stronger with each passing day. She had learned more than lessons from books. She had learned resilience, courage, and empathy by observing the woman. The child's bond with her mentor became a source of mutual growth, teaching the woman patience, joy, and the power of positive influence. Together, they created a small ecosystem of learning and compassion within the community, proving that even a single act of bravery could lead to a chain of positive change. By the end of the year, the woman had fully settled into her new life. She had reclaimed independence, purpose, and dignity. She had formed bonds that went beyond gratitude, creating lasting relationships built on trust and respect. The man, once a distant observer, had become a partner in her mission, quietly supporting her while allowing her voice to lead. And the little girl, whose life had been saved by a single act of courage, now thrived under guidance, love, and inspiration. The woman reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a moment of selfless bravery in the street, she had moved to a life of impact, connection, and hope. She understood now that courage was not just about dramatic acts, but about every choice to live with integrity, compassion, and dedication. Each small effort, each lesson, each life touched, became a testament to the power of the human spirit and the potential for change, no matter the circumstances.